Hi everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Bird's Eye View, where we discuss different topics that affect the Black community today, and we talk about why those things happened through looking through the lens of history. Today I'm actually with some of my family members, so hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. But here I have my mom, Tony Scott. I have my stepdad, Dr. Johnny Scott. What? This is gonna be authentic. So what do you want to say?
Antone Scott.
Okay, sorry, Antone Scott.
Why she go by Antone?
That's her government name.
Oh, damn! I'm right on.
What is?
A professional name.
That's her professional name.
Thank you.
Whatever. So I have my mom and my stepdad and my sister who just spoke. That's Olivia. So yes, Olivia is here. She wants to quote unquote produce the episode, so I'll let her produce the episode today.
Yay.
And well, if you don't know me, I'm your host. My name is Trenda Bird, and just wanted to welcome you guys to this episode. So today we're actually going to be talking about white privilege. Okay, and
You forgot to introduce your dad.
I'm about to do that.
Oh, okay.
Oh my god. So I want to give you a little bit of background about my parents because my mom was like looking over my shoulder, looking at my notes. Okay, so my mom, Antone Scott, has a master's in special correction education and counseling. She's actually a school counselor at an alternative school. It works with students who are either they're like juveniles and
Yeah, or they have some kind of infraction from their home school and they come and stay at my school for a length of time and we work with them.
yeah. So she has a really big heart for young people who basically just need extra attention. They need help. So she does a great job of doing that. She also has worked in detention centers, mental health, shelter for battered women, daycare, and American school at a military post in Turkey when we used to live in Turkey back in the early 90s. She also helped establish a school counseling in program?
In Malawi, Africa.
Oh yeah, Malawi, Africa. She helped establish a school counseling program. And with all that, she's also helped raise 6 children and been working in North Carolina schools for about 27 and a half years. So she's almost at her due for retirement, which will be awesome because I know she's worked hard for that. And then I have my stepdad, Dr. Johnny Scott. It was funny because he actually sent me like his whole resume. I'm just like, he's done so much. I can't wait. What am I supposed to say? But basically, right now, currently, he's actually a visiting professor at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. He's a professor in the sociology department. You can say hi.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you.
And he also was a professor at Texas Tech
University, yes.
University at Lubbock.
And he gave a couple of guest lectures at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
Yes, he did. And he also teaches not only sociology, but he teaches criminology.
Criminal justice, criminology.
Policing.
And he got his master's from Appalachian State University, which is also where I got my my 2 bachelors that I have. So I remember going to his graduation, and that kind of gave me, this is what Appalachian looks like. So
He's a cool professor. All his students really like him. He keeps it real. He's 100.
And he got his undergrad from Gardner-Webb University in criminal justice.
Oh yeah, guys, his undergrad from Gardner-Webb. You said that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I said that. Well, okay, so that's for the introductions. So what I want to do is, because the nature of this podcast, sometimes that we can talk about some heavy subjects, but I also want to start off with like a icebreaker of some sort. So for this icebreaker, it's going to be, if you could be cast in a movie of your choice, what movie would you choose and which character would you want to play? Olivia?
I need time to think about this.
Well, I'll tell you mine. I think mine would be any of the Marvel movies.
For which character?
I'm going to say Black Panther, and I'm going to say, oh gosh, what's the sister's name? The scientist.
Shuri or something like that?
Shuri, yeah.
I don't know.
I want to be her. Because even though she doesn't have like superpowers, I like the fact that she is very smart. And she's just really cool because she like really helps the Black Panther, her brother, on all the things that she can do. Like without all the technology in her brains and her smarts, then her brother would just have strength. And using the vibranium, I think it's really cool. So I think she is really cool. So I would want to be her. Anybody else?
I can't think of anybody I want to be or what movie I want to be in. If I want to be in a movie, I want to play myself, and I want to play what I do, and that's working with my students.
Okay.
It's like Freedom Riders. That could be something.
Freedom Riders, I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that.
Daddy?
I don't know. The first thing that comes to mind is Birth of a Nation and Nat Turner.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Because he was willing to die for what he believed, and he really believed that God was telling him, to do what he was doing. And while to some degree it seems violent in nature to a lot of people, God works in mysterious ways. But the idea that from an early time in his life, I think from his birth actually, that his mother even told him that he was ordained to do God's work. And though there was some violence to it, he believed in what he was doing and was willing to die for it.
That's a good one. That is a really good movie. I've only seen that once. Okay, so yes,
I have my answer.
Okay.
It's actually gonna be a TV show. It's gonna be Madam Secretary. Love that TV show. I think I like how she leads. But mostly any movie or TV show with a strong woman, either physically, emotionally, whatever. I really like it.
I like that too.
Like Wonder Woman.
Yeah, Wonder Woman's on my list, but I had to choose Madam Secretary over Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I would have chosen
Because
Madam
Secretary
Secretary
is-
over Wonder Woman.
because I guess that's a real
It's a
real
real-
thing.
But
Realistic.
fictional would be Black Widow or Wonder Woman. I ain't gonna lie.
Okay, so we're talking about white privilege. So what is white privilege? What is the history behind white privilege? And when I was doing some research, I found some different definitions of white privilege, but one of the ones that stuck out to me, it says that white privilege is an institutional rather than a personal set of beliefs granted to the people who dominate the powerful positions in our institutions. One of the primary privileges is that of having greater access to power and resources than people of color. In other words, purely on the basis of our skin color, doors open to us that are not open to other people. And I believe the woman who actually had that definition, her name is Peggy McIntosh. And I had learned through my research that Peggy McIntosh, she had written a lot of books about women and white privilege in terms of, I guess, like equality and things like that. So if you ever get a chance to look at some of her work, some of it is really interesting to read. So that is kind of the definition of white privilege.
From her standpoint.
From her standpoint,
I
yeah.
see that she was an American feminist.
Yeah. So she was an American feminist, and she's written several things. One of her, and this was an article she wrote back in 1988 that was titled "White Privilege and Male Privilege: A Personal Account of Coming to See Correspondence Through Work in Women's Studies." So she does a lot of women's studies writings as well, and also about sexuality. So she kind of does an array of things. So, but that was kind of one of the quotes that kind of spoke out to me in terms of white privilege. Yeah. All right. So we're going to talk about where do you guys think the whole notion of white privilege, where it came from?
I mean, it's been in place from this section of America. And one of the cases that kind of comes to mind is the case of John Punch back in the mid 1600s. He was a indentured servant who, along with two other white indentured servants, tried to run away from the person who they were indebted to and owed work to. And they were all three captured. And when it came to time to go to court, the two white men were essentially given their freedom and allowed to go back to work, while John Punch was imprisoned, being the only African American. And so there are probably some incidences before that as an example, but that's the first one that comes to mind for me. And it's just the concept, as you were saying earlier, that because people are white, they have this extra advantage. They have these things that not everybody else has available to them because of their race. And so if we look at America in its inception, the people who came and so-called established America have established from the very beginning rules that were advantageous to them and not everybody else. And that continues today.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think now in society, whether you hear it on social media or you hear it on the news, white privilege is something that has been coming up a lot lately. And so that's part of the reason why I wanted to make this the first episode here, what it is.
Well, it's coming up a lot, but not enough, because a lot of white people think they don't have it.
Right.
You know, so that tells me it's not being heard enough or talked about enough. And I'm out in my classes, as you all know, I talk about it. And I guess by the end of the semester, a lot of white students come around. But overall, most white people will tell you there's no such thing as white privilege.
Exactly.
Well, even and I told you that clip that I saw from Trevor Noah, and he explained it so eloquently, where I think it was a question in the audience, and it was a white gentleman, and he asked the question of, he doesn't see how he is benefiting from white privilege because, he's, I guess, poor. He doesn't see it because he was associating white privilege with wealth, with economic status. And so Trevor Noah had to explain that it has nothing to do with your economic status. You could be, making $15,000 or making $100,000, just because that you are a white male, or just because that you are, rich, doesn't mean that it doesn't affect you. And so he really put it in a way that made sense, that I think he kind of that gentleman understood, because it doesn't have anything to do with wealth. Because even like back in slavery, in the time of slavery, when a enslaved woman would deliver the master's baby, as soon as that baby was born, that white baby had more privilege than that enslaved woman who might have been 30, 40 years old, just because of the color of their skin, because of their status. And so with white privilege, it does open up certain doors and it makes certain norms. Because if you think about it, not only are white people affected by white privilege, but I think black people are affected by white privilege as well, because...
But there's no thinking in it for me. It is.
Yeah.
It is. And I think one thing about white people, they don't have to think about that. They don't go around thinking that they're not going to get what they want.
And that's the privilege right there.
That's
the privilege.
Right.
Because minorities recognize they got to secure an advantage somehow.
Right.
But to be able to think to yourself, wow, I have no advantage.
That's right.
That's privilege right there.
That's privilege.
So actually, Richard Wright's novel Native Son touched a bit on this. So the main character is Bigger Thomas, and Richard Wright wrote Bigger to be highly unlikable, because he just isn't man who just commits a lot of crimes. But this book actually makes the case that there's no escape from this destiny, or any other Black American, since they are necessary products of the society that formed them and told them since birth exactly who they were and who they were supposed to be. So like this book just kind of really highlights white privilege, especially in the criminal system. So they just show like, okay, no matter how much you try to change as a Black person, you're still defined by your Blackness, and you're still kind of trying to work your way out of these parameters that have been set because you're Black. Mm-hmm. Highly recommend the novel for anyone who likes to read. Mm-hmm.
Oh. I used to have it here. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think with white privilege, it is something. My thing is, when people try to deny, like when you have like your students that come in they don't understand what it is. Because I think there was somebody that I asked the other day, and I asked them, I said, do you know what white privilege is? And the person didn't know. And so I had to explain to them what it was. And they kept asking me questions. Well, they kept trying to tie it to that economic status. And it's like, it's one of those things that you don't have to do anything to have it. Like, you don't have to work for it.
Right.
It's something that's already there you have.
We right back to the point is, they don't think about that. I mean, that's not words that may be in their vocabulary, but it's in ours because we can see it. We can see the injustice. We can see how we are treated differently as a race of people. Mm-hmm. And so, when I was back in college, one of my professors wanted us to do some work in getting to know each other, so she paired us up. And I was paired up with a white man. And we both learned so much. But he told me, he said he never thought about that. He didn't even understand what it was. He just assumed that everybody got and have what he have and have the same rights and privileges that he does. But once he started hearing my story, then that started opening up his eyes. So they don't know. They think that everybody is hunky-dory just like they are. They don't have to be afraid driving at night and get stopped by a white police officer. They don't fear that.
I think it also goes to white privilege, where how Black families teach their children a different way. Because I think when I was at Stuart Brattonsville, we got into this conversation with one of the visitors that came, and it was a Black visitor, and we were talking about how, like back in the day, you taught your children, as Black families, you taught your children that when a white person is walking down the sidewalk, you get off the sidewalk and let them walk by. You get back on the sidewalk. And even today, we have that notion that subconsciously we still do that. I read an article the other day and the article was basically saying that we're so used to doing that is what that is just innate in us to do that, and it got me thinking, because I've done that before, where I've moved a little bit over to let the person by. I'm like, why do I have to move? Why can't that person?
Apparently,
move?
I didn't make you militant enough, because I don't do that. No, I don't, because let me tell you something. And I was brought up during that time, right? Mm-hmm. But just like I remember going into the store with my grandmother, and it was a little young white girl at the cash register. And she was really like disrespecting my grandmother. And I was in high school myself. And I let my grandmother know right there in front of her, Grandmama, you ain't got to take that. And I got on her about how she was talking to my grandmother. And my grandmother said, oh, no, that's okay, Ann, that's okay. No, it's not okay. She needs to respect you. Grandmama, you way older than she. So she has no right to talk to you like that. And I said that in front of her. And I let her know, you don't talk to my grandmother like that. And I think, we have to stand up for ourselves. And I can see what you're saying, that some people may act like that or feel that way. Mm-hmm. But, growing up the way I was raised and growing up during the time I was growing up, we had to fight for what we believed in, politically. We had to stand our ground. So. So no, I don't feel that way. If anything, y'all move over and give me some room.
I think when people do that, and a lot of Black people do it, we're seeking some kind of acceptance from white people,
Right.
in the sense that, I know my place,
Yeah.
and so I'm gonna step over and move over, and that way you won't feel threatened by me. And so we're seeking a sense of acceptance from white people, but it's a mindset that exists even still today.
Oh yeah.
It is. I think one of the things that we have to think a different way that white people don't have to think. And I think part of it goes to the whole double consciousness that W.B. Du Bois was talking about, and how it's like we're living basically in two worlds. Like, the America that my white counterparts are living in is not the same America that I'm living in. Even though we're living in the same country, we could live on the same street. Shoot, we can live next door to each other, but we're still living in two different Americas. Because I saw something on Facebook one time that said that why is it that when we have like our U.S. history classes, why is it that we always get to learn about, like, it's in the core curriculum that we learn about George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, but African American history, that part of the U.S. history, has to be an elective. And so it's a choice whether or not you take that elective. Like, you have to choose to take that elective. Why is that not like more so ingrained in the core? Because yes, we had Black history like in grade school and stuff, but it wasn't until I got to college where I got to choose my classes that the electives were the African American history. Because even in college, when I was getting my history degree, we had, I think it wasn't really a requirement for us to take like an African American history class, but I took more of them because of what I wanted to do and because of my minor. But it wasn't like built into like the core in order to graduate that you needed to take so many African American history courses, even though African American history is U.S. history.
It's U.S. history. And see, that's the problem. That's the problem that goes on today. It has not changed. In all these years, it has not changed. They have not taken African American or Latin American and put it inside the U.S. American history books. They teach those as separate classes. And I remember when I was at an elementary school, I had a teacher come to my office and wanted me to help her to calm down the children. And I said, well, what's going on? Well, she was trying to teach slavery. Now, that's in the book. Okay, all the great things that African American people have done, the only thing that's in the U.S. history books at a great extent of it is slavery. And so she had about, a handful of Black children in her class, and the rest of the class was white. And she had upset the Black children on a white woman trying to teach slavery. So then she comes to my office to get me to come in there to help calm the children down. And so I went in there and I talked to them and I told them how great our people was and how what we did and what we sacrificed. That's why it's important for us to get an education. That's what I tell the kids at my school right now, how important it is that we uphold our ancestors and the blood that was shed, the things that they went through, just to get us to the point where we can have a free education. So that's what's important. Everybody can't teach that. And that's not the only thing that we should be teaching. To me, this is just another way of keeping us in our place. Is we're going to spend time on slavery, but we're not going to talk about all the great things that African Americans have brought to this world.
And see, that's just one example of white privilege.
Yeah.
Can I give a more lighthearted example?
Yeah.
So y'all, since it's Christmas time, I've been going around buying Christmas decorations, and our mama raised us not to have either a non-Black Santa in the house. We were Black, so it's nice to have things that reflect our skin color. I looked all day. I went to literally 3 or 4 different stores. Every single Santa Claus or Nutcracker was white. I happened to find a Mexican one, which is really cool. I sent that to some of my Mexican friends, but it took me 2 days to finally find a Black Santa. So when I bring this up to my coworkers who are white, one is Asian, the white men didn't understand why it was such a big deal for me to find a Black Santa. And I'm like, it's such a big deal because it's something that just reflects my skin color. Even though it's so trivial to y'all, it's very important to me.
It's representation.
Right, representation. And it goes to media and to movies. That's why you see most of the top actors, A-list actors, they're all white, and it's for a reason. It's there's just a lot going on with the media as well, but very frustrating.
I think that's a great example, when you go into the stores and stuff. Because I remember when like every Christmas for a long time, every Christmas I would always ask for a Barbie doll, and I would always want a black Barbie doll. And a lot of times, sometimes it would be harder to find like a black Barbie doll or like a black baby doll. It's like you have to like search for those those toys and stuff. Because even like when I'm going to get like a birthday card or anything like that, I have to like find like the mahogany cards. Like you have to really like search for. We're always searching for that section in the store, searching for, like, but within other areas, you don't really have to do that. Like our white counterparts don't have to do that. They don't have to search for that. But I found an article that gives some other examples of white privilege. And this article, it says, is 10 examples that prove white privilege exists in every aspect imaginable. And the person who wrote this article, I believe, I'm trying to see, I believe the person was white who wrote this article. Yeah. So it says, so here are like the 10. It says, I have the privilege of having a positive relationship with the police in general. I have the privilege of being favored by school authorities. I have the privilege of attending segregated schools of affluence. I have the privilege of learning about my race in school. Quote, white privilege is your history being part of the core curriculum and mine being taught as an elective. I have the privilege of finding children's books that overwhelmingly represent my race. Again, that is part of the norm. I have the privilege of soaking in media blatantly biased towards my race. I have the privilege of escaping violent stereotypes associated with my race. I have the privilege of playing the colorblind card, wiping the slate clean of centuries of racism. I have the privilege of being insulated from the daily toll of racism. I have the privilege of living ignorant of the dire state of racism today. And those are just 10 examples.
And they have the privilege of not being second guessed.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Not having their intelligence questioned or doubted. Mm-hmm. Not having their financial status questioned or doubted.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but...
I was going to say, this hits hard because y'all, so in high school, I was second in my class. I got into all these great universities, and a lot of my friends just talked it up to, oh, because you're black. And when I was, y'all, when I was 17 or 18, I didn't have the vocabulary to tell them what they needed to hear in that moment. But now that I'm 26, I love all my friends from high school. I would love to see them again, to tell them, like, that was not okay what y'all said. So yeah, I mean, that's just one example of like, you're just second guessed, like your intelligence is because you're black. And I'm like, if I was stupid, I would have not gotten into these schools. Like, so that's not like.
I have an example too, because like this happened. I was in a meeting one time, and it was like some of me and my black colleagues. We was in a meeting, and there was this older white gentleman. And, you know, after we had the meeting and everything, and the meeting was about some project we're doing in terms of for like a Black History project, right? And the white gentleman, at the end, he said, man, you guys are just so smart. You guys are just so smart for your age. It's like, since you're so young and stuff. And I'm just like, I knew what he meant.
Or that backhanded compliment. Oh, you're so well spoken.
Yes.
What does that mean?
And so I'm just like, okay, like, that's not really a compliment. Like, I don't know. But again, it's like that whole second guessing thing. It's like, why do you have to second guess me? Like, I went to the same exact school that you did, had the same exact teacher, have the same exact degree, but you want to second guess me over my white counterpart.
Well, it's like students sometimes, since I've gotten my doctorate, will ask me, now you got your PhD, right?
Really?
Now, do you think they would let a Negro male stand in front of all those white kids without a PhD?
No.
And so why then do they have to ask?
Because they just got to be sure. They gotta be sure. So and I guess
I bet you don't hear them asking them why.
No.
Professors, you got your PhD, right?
Maybe we should start asking them.
Yeah.
So wait a minute, look, do you have your PhD? They be like, why are you asking me that? Of course I have it.
It's double standard.
Yeah, it's double standard.
But they so ingrained in it that they don't even realize that they even doing it. They don't realize that. They don't understand when they ask that question, because we know what that means when they ask us, are you sure you got your degree? We know what that means. Yeah. And so we're not stupid. We know what it means.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, so, Trinda, you, me, and Marcus, we all grew up in a white area. Like, when I say we're the only black person in our classes, legit the only black person in our classes. So we're the kind of black people that white people love to be friends with, because I like to teach people what they don't know. And so when it comes to race, I end up speaking to a lot of white people about it, just because once they realize you're an open black person and you're like forgiving and gracious, because like I know these conversations can be hard for white people. I will say for my white European friends, these conversations are very easy. It's just particularly white Americans that have a hard time discussing this kind of topic. So it's fascinating to talk to them about it. So yeah, I would say, meet some black friends, meet some, Hispanic, Latino friends, meet some friends who are Asians, people who are not like yourself. If you're black, whatever you are, just be willing and don't objectify them. Don't want to be friends with them just because they are another race than you, but actually treat them like a person, because that's another problem as well.
Exactly.
And so white privilege gives you all of that. White people fail to understand that they actually frame how everybody sees themselves.
Yes.
That is so true. Preach it. Like reading some kind of like poetry slam.
That's
preach
so
it.
true to me.
Oh my goodness. Well, on that note, I think this would be a good time to pause for a word from our sponsors. So we'll be back. If I have my mom and my sister and my stepdad, so we're just talking about white privilege and how white privilege affects the world or whatever.
American society. Definitely.
Yeah, American society. Yeah. Now I have a question, and this goes back to that time that I visited you, Olivia, in Dubai.
I was going to bring this up. Okay.
And no, because I want to know, because you said American society, so I want to know, is white privilege? Do you think white privilege is the same around the world? Because when we went to Dubai, and every time we saw a white person, they were not from America. They were like Australian. They were French. They were Italian. So it's like. But then it's like, in my mind, I had to remember that. I was like, wait a minute, they're not white American, so they don't have the same...
When you're talking about blackness in American context, it's different than blackness when you're overseas, because then you have to bring in Africanness. But then also it really depends on the country. I will say, because American media is so widespread, that white people are still objectified, whether it be for women, there's like the pristine level of like, this is what the most beautiful woman is. Google search beautiful women and you will see what I'm talking about. And so when you're looking at it from Dubai's perspective, so I've lived there for a year, I would say their American privilege is the equivalent to white privilege, because as soon as people realize that you're American, their whole outlook changes to how they see you. Whereas if I was African, I'd be treated differently. So I spoke to some of my Nigerian friends when they go to France. I've been to France myself. Very different experiences in their eyes as compared to me, because you can look at me, know I'm not African. So I just think, white privilege, you still in certain countries kind of get like a leg up, but also there you get a lot of pros being black. So part of it is to, like, if I'm in the Middle East, being black, I will say when Barack Obama was a big plus, when Barack Obama was president, also being black in Latin America was very different. People see you, I honestly think, not to get political, but when we had a black president, like, people saw black Americans differently, and they also know how poorly black Americans are often treated in our country. Again, this is all generalizations. I'm not speaking about specific cases, but there's so many of that. But I think it's interesting because I was saying like my white European friends, like white Latino friends, Middle Eastern people who also can pass as white, they recognize that Blackness is very different for Black Americans. Because I think what's so interesting about Black Americans as opposed to any other type of people group in the United States, Black Americans are the one people group that cannot trace their ancestry back. So I identify a lot with my Americanness. Like, I love my country. I think my sister's a little bit different on that. But I think part of it is...
I love my country too.
Well, not on that, but like how patriotic I am. I'm quite patriotic compared to you. I'm very patriotic. But part of it is that because I literally have no other country that I could claim even if I wanted to. Yeah. All my friends from different ethnicities can claim another country if that's what it came to. So I think that's why Blackness is in America, if you're not African, that's a qualification there, is very different. So yeah, I mean, the world perspective, I feel most free as an individual when I'm not in the US. And it's because, again, as my dad said, white people define you in a way in the United States. And it's very frustrating to live underneath that gaze.
Well, I'm glad you said it, because if you think about it too, we're classified as African American,
which I don't identify with.
We don't know, but it's like until because we haven't done that DNA testing thing yet.
I'm gonna do it.
We need to do it anyway. We can't say, oh, I'm not Nigerian American. I'm my family's from Ghana. Mm-hmm. Like, we can't say that. But again, that's part of white privilege, because it's like we have to say African American, but then it's like you have people out there that know that they're like, oh, I'm French, I'm Italian, and Irish, and it's like, but we just say African.
Well, I'll go ahead and do that so you can be sure that you are from Africa, because you really are. So I'll make sure that you guys know that.
I just want to do the whole, what is this? Well, I don't know.
Well, we'll do it. I got it. We'll do it, because you guys are from Africa, in case you didn't know that. But, in the same, even what Olivia is saying, I lived in Turkey for 2.5 years. And even there, we were treated great. I mean, being Black and living in Turkey at the time we were there, it was wonderful. I enjoyed it. They were very nice to us. I learned a lot about their culture. They learned about ours, and they just treated us differently in a good way. And just like I remember, they always wanted to touch you, Trini. You were just a little baby, when we were there. And they always they said you bring good luck. So I had to keep them from...
You hear that? I bring good luck.
I had to keep them from always, touching you and want to rub your hair and all that stuff.
But do you think that was a form of objectification as well?
Well, there was a saying, and I'm not putting this on the Turkish people. I don't know. This is just what was told to me, that Turkish people saw white blonde hair and blue eyes as evil. Okay, that was enough for me. And they saw, but they were very kind to us. They did not treat us no different. We were engaged in their culture, and it was just wonderful time being there, and I enjoyed being there when I was there. And then, of course, Turkey is the allies of us. But there was just a place that was just wonderful to live, and you didn't feel so outcast there,
And I think that, and I agree with that, because even when I went, because going to Dubai, that was my first time traveling, like, really by myself out of the country as an adult. And I felt different, like Olivia was saying, like, I wasn't seen as an African American. I was just seen as American.
And you're seen as Trinda.
Yeah.
Like, not as
Trinda,
right.
who is
Black girl.
Right. And so I thought that was so different, like I had never felt that way before. And then, like, even when I was flying back into the country, like, despite all the craziness that's going on in our country, it's like I felt proud to be an American coming back home after having a great time in Dubai. But it's like I knew that I was in a foreign country. I knew that I was in a foreign land that wasn't my own. I wasn't home. So yes, I am an American, but then after that, we have these labels, but people put but people are so in tune into the labels because it's like, why are we African American? Why can't we just be American? But for like our white counterparts, we just say American.
And that is framed by your white counterpart.
Exactly.
And so we are never American. Mm-hmm. So we have to call ourselves something else American. Mm-hmm. Because the white society will not fully accept us as Americans.
And I think it's interesting because not only with African Americans, you have like Asian American, you have, you know, people, Native Americans that belong here. They're like, wait a minute.
They will not accept us as full Americans and allow us to hold on to our heritage.
Right.
Yeah. We have to choose either or, and like with the, you know, the Native Americans, they had to choose either or. Like they didn't really get a choice. They had to assimilate. Like they had no choice if they wanted to survive. They had to learn the English language. They had to dress the way that the white man was dressing. So
you know how we have all these college classes to explore blackness and understand heritage. I remember there's one university, there was a class to explore whiteness. And I remember I asked you about this, but I forgot what you said about, because I thought it would be interesting for white people to have that space because they don't ever have to think about themselves in a collective group like that. They really think about themselves individual because they have that privilege because they are white. But I don't know, I want to know your thoughts again as to whether or not you think white privilege or like a whiteness class is
so they have time to boast. That's all that is.
Yeah, I don't think there's a need for a class like that.
Interesting. Okay. Even though some white people want to talk about like their
whiteness
and how it affects others,
but they
I hate having advantages over people. I feel so burdened.
But like, okay, so one of my coworkers he deals with white guilt a lot, and he calls himself out on it, and I find it to be hilarious. I'm just like, calm down.
What he considers white guilt, I consider the seeds of white consciousness.
Ooh, that's good. Snap your finger out.
Or developing white consciousness anyway. You know, because the one thought that kind of came to mind a little bit ago is that, you know, I thought of myself, and I think of you all. You know, when you all step out the door and walk through this neighborhood, we're one of the few black families in this neighborhood.
Right.
And you all are thinking in the back of your mind about your blackness.
Right.
Somewhere. White kids walking down the street don't do that.
Right. Or like if I'm walking down the street, or if I'm walking down the same street and the police car's coming by, I'm thinking something until he passes by.
And it didn't used to be that way, honestly. When I was a kid, I was like, I like cops, I like wave. And now as an adult and seeing what's been happening, it's just more in social media now. I'm just like, I have to like second guess. Because like one time when my friends and I were going to this church conference up in Virginia, in the middle of the night, she was going like 15 miles per hour over it. Now she is Jamaican descent, like her parents from Jamaica. She wears head wraps and stuff. So I think the cop like saw that and kind of took that, and she felt like such a burden in that moment. So if I was in the car with her, she told me that she would have been a lot more upset than what she was. I was verbally telling her, stay calm, it's okay. Because like we're in the middle of I-95, pitch black, and this cop came out of nowhere, like pitch black darkness. So like this man, you know, is a white man, like middle age, armed with a gun, and you have two black young females in the car together. And that was something that we actively thought about in that moment. We're just like, wow, okay, this is very stereotypical if nothing else was, you know? And she, like, the cop asked her certain questions that she took to be racial profiling, but I was like, okay, he could just be gathering information for his job, but, like, you never know. It's such a murky situation.
It really is, and it is so dangerous even hear you to sit here and talk about it like that.
But like, I never told y'all.
No, you never told
you never told me that.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, I always go to the nearest police station. But, you know, I wonder if that make them mad when you just keep driving because you're looking for a police station.
I don't know, that they might start turning sirens. They're trying to arrest you like you're trying to evade police. No, I wasn't.
But that's what they say. But I mean, this day and time, you do think twice. And maybe it was going on all along. It's just that it's more visual now, and people are talking about it and got social media, so it's really out there now.
Cameras everywhere.
Cameras
and knowing your rights, that you do have the right to record.
You know, so it is. Well, you know, I had it's interesting because, you know, sometimes I have a student every now and then it just kind of, you know, I'm not prepared sometimes for what a question they may ask me. and I was enrolling a student some time back, and it was a white student. And for him to ask me, he said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "What?" He said, "Is it really hard being black?" I was not expecting that question. You know, it kind of threw me off a little bit. And I'm going, well, I really don't know, considering I hadn't been no other color. You know, being black all my life, you know. He said, "Aren't you scared when a police officer stop you and you being black?" I said, "Well, I'm not really afraid of police officers. I never thought about it for myself as much as for my husband and my son. That's what scares me, is my husband or my son getting stopped by the police more so than myself. But, yeah, I'm still black. But it's just interesting that I was asked that question. It just kind of threw me off because I wasn't expecting it.
I think one way, and this would be like a interesting experiment, like I guess like in a controlled environment, when you get asked those kind of questions, you turn the same question back on them so they can see, to demonstrate what white privilege is. Because white privilege is asking
Questions like that.
Questions like that.
Yeah,
and it's
I
like,
had one black friend who was always, she got so frustrated with, like, anytime me and her were, like, together and around white people or people who weren't black, conversations about race always came up. And she started asking me and them, "Why are y'all always asking us questions about race? Y'all talk about race when you're just with white people." And for her, it was something that was very sensitive, and I never got to the root of why. But it's something like he always told us as kids, like, white people have a way of reminding you that you're black.
Of course.
Every day. And it's
every day.
it's even if they have the best of intentions, it's still reminding you that you're something other than white. And it's pretty sure other minorities feel that as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they have their way of doing that. I grew up with a really good friend, and she was white, and I don't know why, but sometimes the teachers would get our names mixed up, and I know it wasn't because of race, because I'm black and she white. I guess we were just together so much. But even when I'm with my white friends, they have their way of letting me know from time to time that you're black. They don't let you forget that.
I did a thing this semester in sociology class, and last semester as well, and I teamed students up with people of different races. So you have a black and a white, maybe a white and an Asian, white Latino, black Latino, whatever the case may be. And I told them, I said, this is your opportunity to ask somebody any question you want to know about their race. I said, stop coming up to me asking me after class. I said, if you want to know what people think, this is the perfect time. And a lot of the students said it was the best thing that ever happened to them so far in the college experiences, because they had to get to know each other.
Right.
And it wasn't just a one-time thing. And then you could tell the students who really got together because they knew things. They knew the dogs' names and all those other kind of things. And the ones who made it, some people just, and this generation is stuck on texting for some reason, but some people would text stuff. And what they had to do, they had to do a presentation on each other before class.
That's cool.
And so you could tell the ones who didn't get intimate. It was just a texting thing. Is now, what's your dog's name again? And then somebody else could name the dog.
right.
You know. And so the idea simply was get to know people and stop relying on society to define people and their personalities for you. So here's your chance. If you want to know what it feels like to be black, ask this person right in front of you.
Right.
Or Latino in America. Ask this person, not me, because I don't know.
That's right.
That's why representation is so important. So the fact that you were a black professor and able to speak up for minorities in that way, I don't want to make you the voice of all, you know? But like that was just the way, because I feel like a white professor would either have to be very aware to say stuff like that, or like just it's just interesting that it came from you. I remember when you gave that lecture at UNC Chapel Hill. It's also my school, y'all. You
Go Tar Heels.
remember the couple of like black football players that came up to the white professor who, you know, whose class it was, and they spoke to both of y'all and were just like, we finally understood things differently. That this white lady's been saying the whole semester, but because it came out of your black mouth, we understood it differently. And that they actually were actively engaged in the class, that they hadn't been all semester. So
that's a whole nother topic, just talking about representation. That's a whole nother topic, especially with education.
That goes back to white privilege, because white people have the privilege of seeing themselves represented in so many different facets of life, and so they can imagine themselves doing so many different things. Whereas for black people, we can't, or even other minorities, you don't always have that person that allows you to dream and be like, oh, like Mae Jemison, the first black female astronaut. And as a little girl, I remember she came and spoke here at the Science Center, and I could dream that I could be her one day, but I probably would not have that same dream if she was a white woman, you know?
Right.
And and I guess that's what I was trying to help people understand, because besides the podcast, besides my consulting business, I work at a museum. The museum that I work at is an aviation museum. Now, when you think of aviation, your mind doesn't automatically go to a black or a person of color. It goes to normally a white man. And so what the museum is trying to do, what we're trying to do, is we're trying to expand that narrative and include more people of color, include more stories of women. And so it's all about who you see. And in the county that I work in, majority of that county is mostly Hispanics and African Americans. But if you go to that museum and you see the visitorship that's coming in, it's more white people coming to that museum. Why? Why is that? Like, to me, that's kind of weird. It's like,
and you know, there are black people who are interested in aviation, Hispanic people interested in aviation. Like, so that's a good question.
So it's like you gotta, if they don't see themselves, then they're not going to think that they can do it, or they want to do it.
And that's why black people were excluded from American history.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because if we were truly aware of our roles in the development of America, we'd understand it. We'd have a greater pride, like we were talking about, in ourselves. But to ensure that we did not have pride in ourselves, we were excluded from history.
Yeah,
there would be no America won't be for black people. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah,
and you know, and even talking about, you know, sometimes, you know, we will boycott, saying
but national anthem?
The national anthem.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
I was trying to figure what she was trying to say.
I said Pledge of Allegiance. I was like, probably national anthem.
Yeah. Somebody help me out here. And even the Pledge of Allegiance, let's even talk about that, the Pledge of Allegiance. I know even at school now, you know, in our schools, half the time we don't even say it anymore. And the other
you
half,
don't say it anymore?
I said in some schools.
Oh.
Okay? There is not said. I'm trying not to blame it on all schools.
Right,
There's different things going on in different districts. It just depends on what district and what school you're in. Sometimes they'll say it and sometimes they're not. Now they give you the privilege of standing or not. You don't have to. Now, back when I was growing up, you didn't have a choice. You had to stand up. Now it's up to you, your choice. And it is interesting because for me, now only speaking for me, I can only talk for me, is the fact that I think about my family, my sisters, my brothers, my uncles, my cousins, you know, my aunts, my family that have served this country in some way or another, who had died for this country. And then, you know, to me, that's a disrespect, you know, when I don't stand. Because when I'm standing, I'm thinking about them. I'm not thinking about the craziness that's going on right now. I'm thinking about the fact that I get to see my sister or I get to see my brother one more time because they survived their service. And some of them did, some of them didn't. You know, right now I'm talking about my sister and brother right now that's retired from serving their country. They're here with me. And I think about that when I stand. So sometimes it's personal when you do stuff. You know, you can't just look at somebody and say, oh, I'm not standing. This country ain't doing nothing for me. And that may be true. But I think about somebody besides myself and what has happened
and
with my family.
And the people that have gone before you to give you the liberties that you have today.
To vote,
to get an education.
As a full person.
Right, a full person. And to have that choice to stand
Yeah.
or not, you know, we come a long way.
So also an example of the Pledge of Allegiance, to throw in another example of white privilege. So one of my best friends growing up here in high school was a Hispanic girl. Her family's from Ecuador. So when I was in Spanish class, because I love studying languages, we actually learned the Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish. So then we started saying it in Spanish because it was our first period. So that's when we were saying the pledge.
Oh, that's
a number
cool.
of my white classmates actually were upset that we were saying the Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish instead of English. And I'm just like, y'all realize that United States of America has no official language, correct? If they didn't know that. But then also the fact that, like, we were literally in Spanish class. Like, why not say the pledge in Spanish? And to so many people
Right.
in our country, like,
Exactly.
they speak Spanish. So, like, you know, it's just...
I bet
Yeah,
she was
just
in
got
a
under my
French class. They
skin.
would have had no problem you saying it in French.
Which is more interesting because we have fewer French native speakers here.
I'm
than
just saying.
You know, so that's just another example of just like
Right.
that kind of thought process.
And even in church, sometimes we end up singing some of our songs in Spanish.
Yeah.
So we all here together.
But I want to go back to the point where you were saying that if hearing it from a black professor versus a white professor, because you're saying that if the white professor, he or she has to be aware. And so my question is, if you could give a message to our white counterparts who want to say that they're quote unquote woke, and that they learn, and they might be hearing for the first time or really understanding about white privilege today, how do you think someone who is white, who is woke, can use their white privilege?
They use it without knowing they're using it. Mm-hmm. And that's what, again, privilege is. You don't have to know you have it to have it.
Okay.
You know, and I'll break it down in a more, maybe a more relatable sense.
Yeah,
Because
break it
Tony and I have talked about this before. You all don't realize the privilege you all had being our children. At St. Stephen's Elementary, your middle school, your high, even in this town itself. Just from being our children gave you all a sense of privilege in this one little spectrum. And so now, if you think of a white person in the world, and what they get just from being white is 10 times more than what you all got from being our kids. And y'all didn't give it a second thought, did you? Didn't think about it.
No, y'all didn't think about it.
No.
And so that's magnified maybe 100-fold when you're white. You don't have to think about
You
it.
don't think about it.
Because I guess you're saying because like the opportunities that we were.
The opportunity was there. We
Yeah.
allowed you guys, and we made sure. We knew, we were very aware, and we wanted you all to have a better life than what we had. So you guys were afforded opportunities that maybe some, couldn't do.
And we understood that y'all's teachers knew who we were.
Exactly.
By coming to the classroom and meeting them. And
But also like working in the school.
Working in the school system, yeah.
Yeah.
You've been very active in y'all lives, while you guys did your sports and your music and just different things you
going
did.
on field trips,
Going on
shopping.
field
Yeah, I
trips,
think-
having the best schools,
So that goes along with, I hate the word like ally, but like at least being friends with people of color in those moments where you see something happen, you can literally use your mouth and step into that situation and be like, this is wrong. I think that so there's this one example I saw on Facebook of this black lady who's trying to pay at the grocery store, and I forget the exact details, and there was something happening where like this white lady who's behind her in line thought the cashier was profiling this black lady who was trying to pay. So then this white woman stepped in and was like, nah, this is wrong, blah, blah, all this happened. And because that white woman stepped in, that black woman was able to pay in the manner that she wanted to pay. Now, this white woman, from my knowledge based on this video, did not know this black woman at all. But like the black woman afterwards, like thanked her and all that. So I think it was just someone who was watching this interaction happen, like turn on their phone and started recording, because like you don't see that happening every day. So even if you're white, or if you have friends of color, just be aware of like how they're being treated or how they feel in certain situations. Like one of my really good friends in college, if there were certain situations that she knew I was either uncomfortable in or just like felt some kind of way about, and she wasn't there to like help me in that situation, she would ask me about it and make sure my feelings were okay afterwards. It's just little things like that. It's just really being a true friend to people of color, and not just because they're people of color. I'm gonna keep reiterating that.
And we're not saying that I think white people do some use their privilege to help others. I mean, that's all through history, right, Johnny? That's all through America. We had people that was marching in the civil rights movement. You know, we had.
Keep talking.
Because I mean, even for me, in my growing up, in my job, in my work, there was people, white people, that helped me along the way that I could not have gotten to where I am without their help. Now, you know, so you know, we're not sitting here saying that you know, white people, you know, they got privilege, they don't do nothing with it. We do have some people who take that privilege that they have, and they do reach out and help others.
Yeah,
Well, let me tell you this little story real quick, okay? I remember when I was growing up. Well, you guys gotta understand, I'm 58.
It was just cute how you said
I
that.
know. It's like you kind of saw you the way she did. She looked like she was like, "But baby, let me tell you something."
Because I mean, I'm 58 years old, and I had the opportunity to see desegregation happen in school. I was part of it. And I'm just 58 years old and was part of that. You know, it all depends. See, you know, I know that the Supreme Court ruled back in 1954, but things are just all of a sudden happen.
Yeah.
Right? And then you got the Civil Rights Movement in 1964, 10 years later, still trying to make it happen. Okay? I grew up in a very small town, okay, in North Carolina. And it was like around 1967 or so, we were still segregated. And they were trying, first they wanted to say, now this is what I went back and read, because remember, I was young. I was like 6 or 7 years old. And they were saying, well, we'll just put it out there where if black people, they can apply to have their child go to another school. That was their way of dealing with it. So then finally in about 1968 or so, that's when they said, you all got to integrate these schools. And this was 1968. I'm in the second grade or so. I remember now, they talked about high school students and what happened to them and stuff, and how, the feds came in to help that transition. But they don't talk about what's going on for the little ones in elementary school. All I remember is that one day I'm surrounded by all these black people like I'm normally surrounded by. And then the next minute, to me as a child, remember 6 or 7 years old, this is my thinking, things changed. It was like, I remember it being like chaos. Because I guess they were busing, getting ready to bus. So I think it was sometime in September in 1968 is when they finally desegregated the schools. And these white folks came to my school, little white children. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. All I know is that it changed. But I tell you one thing too. I used to walk to school. I lived in a town called Blacktown, little small community, Blacktown. Well, in order for me to get to elementary school, I had to go past this white neighborhood. And at this one particular house on the corner, I don't know if it was a bulldog, what kind of dog it was. It's been too long now. But he would always be chained up. But sometimes, and I don't know why I was walking by myself, but I would be walking alone, going to school. These two little white boys would come out their house. I think they got to the point they started waiting on me. They would come out the house, and by the time I got to their house, they would unchain the dog. And the dog would chase me all the way to the school. And I'd be yelling and crying and running to the school. And it got to a point where when I knew I had to go by that house, I'd be praying, Lord, please don't let those little boys come out, let that dog on me. Every now and then I would get by without that dog chasing me. Other days, they would chase me. And that is what I remember when I was in about second grade. Is those white boys letting that dog out and chase me to school. Do you think I like going to school? No. I started developing stomach aches and stuff, so I could stay home because there were some days I just could not deal with going past this house and running to school for that dog won't get me. And so people got to understand folks' background and where people come from and why I take a stand that I do. Now, I'm gonna tell you one thing. Right now, being a school counselor, I don't see color. I see people. Mm-hmm. And I see people of all colors hurting. Mm-hmm. People of all colors need help. People of all colors need to be able to contribute to our society so we can flourish. Okay? The lessons I've learned along my way and some healing that I've done along my way has helped me to be the person that I am today. And I have love in my heart for everybody.
And that goes in line with one of the things that came out of my classes, these presentations, was that students were surprised how much they had in common with each other. And it didn't matter if you were black, white, whatever the case may be, even some from Saudi Arabia. They were surprised what they had in common, and that was my thing, is that we all have more in common than we don't.
Right. We don't.
Yeah, and so one thing your mother talked about, I said, it brought back one presentation, a white female, and I think a Middle Eastern guy did their presentation, and they sat down. So then a black female and a white female comes up. And so the black female was saying that she didn't really have any friends at UAB. You know, she's in color guard in the band, but she just kind of keeps to herself because nobody really approaches her and she doesn't have any friends. So then the white girl who spoke just before she did raises her hand and says, well, I'm in the color guard too. They didn't even know it.
That's I was like, wait a minute.
How big is this color guard?
I'm imagining the color guard ain't very big. Yeah, I'm thinking it can't be very big. But they had no idea that they were in the color guard.
Wow.
And one thing that kind of came out of that is that, I think I said, well, in part, when you're white, you really don't have to look at the person. In line with what your mother was talking about, you don't have to look at the person. All you saw was that black face, and that was it. You know? And so the white girl goes, well, I'll be your friend now. I'll be your friend now. And I'm interested to see if she would be. But just this idea, this sense that, in your mother's work, she doesn't see color. In education, you shouldn't see color. But people do.
Right.
But white society has made us look at color. Even we don't want to look at it. And so just this sense that, we're more alike than we are different.
We sure are.
But we got to understand, we got to get past what we see and get into what we see.
Exactly.
Well, I think on that note, we will end. I hope you guys are still listening. I know we kind of ran kind of long, but this is just a really good conversation because, again, this is a podcast where it's supposed to be authentic conversations, conversations that'll help us understand each other. And so I hope that you will continue to listen to this podcast as we produce more episodes. And just to remind you all, follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram at birdowl_consulting for right now. That's part of my consulting business. And I'm also on Facebook. Just type in Bird Owl Consulting. You can find me there. And I also want to do a highlight. Each episode, end of each episode, we're going to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight a different, black business. I am a big proponent of supporting black businesses, and that's why I said proponent. I corrected myself. Yes, I said proponent. I always get that mixed up. But anyway, I'm a big proponent of supporting black businesses. So this one I'm going to highlight is called Fast Forward Progress, and this is a black-owned company who celebrates black excellence. And so they have different people who are brand ambassadors. So I'm basically a brand ambassador. So I'm going to include the link in the show notes for you to click on the link and support not only the podcast, but also this business as well. And you can also leave a message on, if you're listening through Anchor, you can also leave a message through Anchor. And you can also subscribe, and please leave a review of the podcast if you are listening on Apple Podcast. I would greatly appreciate it. And let me know what you thought of the first episode, maybe if you have any topics in mind, maybe you have some ideas of topics in the future. And just thank you. So thank you guys for listening, and I will be back next time.